Right, guys, how are things? It's Ryan Bailey here for the Ball Talk podcast, bringing you episode number 15. In today's episode, I was joined by Kevin Egan. Just to give a bit of an introduction to who Kevin is. Kevin is a Dublin-born sports commentator and TV host. Kevin's currently working with Fox Sport and CNN International over in the States. So in this podcast, we just had a chat about Kevin's career so far, how he got to where he is, his plans for the future, the Major League Soccer over in America, and how things are getting all over in America in comparison to in Ireland as well with COVID-19 and all that. So we had a good chat, went on for about 40 minutes or so. The camera cut out at the end, so if you're watching on YouTube, you can catch the last 10 minutes on Spotify. So I hope you enjoy the podcast. I suppose, Kevin, first of all, you're very welcome to the podcast.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me, Ryan.
For anyone, I would have said it in the intro, but for anyone who doesn't know who you are, Kevin, you're with CNN International and Fox Sport. Is that right? Have I got?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, I cover mostly European football for CNN International, based in Atlanta. It's the main CNN news hub, and then there's a sports division there as well. And then I work for Fox Sports South, covering Major League Soccer matches, doing commentary. So like the main play-by-play, they call it here. So the George Hamilton role, I always say when I'm speaking to people from Ireland. That and also doing a lot of hosting for things like E-League and E-MLS and EA games now as well. And so trying to diversify as much as possible.
Yeah, and I think by now everyone will have realised where exactly in the country you're from as well.
You reckon?
They'll have caught the
I'm here
accent.
11 years, Ryan, so if you're saying to me I've kept my accent, I'm delighted.
I think you have. They won't be saying you're from Sligo anyways, that's for sure. So, Kev, I suppose to run through, you're over in the States now. You obviously are in the journalism field and media, all that sort of game, the game that I'm hoping to get into myself. Where did it all start for you? Was sports commentary something that you wanted to do from a small lad, or was it something you acquired?
I mean, what I wanted to do deep down, if you would have asked a 10-year-old me, was to kick the winning free in an All-Ireland football final for the Dubs. I probably realised, I actually was playing the best football of my life, Gaelic football, at under 21 level. I was 19, and I think I was playing the best football of my life, and I tore my cruciate away against Erin's Isle. I'll never forget. The ball bounced up. I jumped about this much off the ground, like literally only a few inches, and caught the ball. But as I caught it, I laid it off to my buddy Andy, best buddy from home, who's since passed away. He died of a heart attack back in 2010, and fittest guy I knew. Anyway, but I passed it off to Andy, and Andy and I had this great chemistry on the pitch, and I knew that I was quick enough to burn the cornerback that was on me. Not quick anymore. And I'd go and I'd try and get it back off Andy. And whatever reason, I twisted my body and I hand passed it to him, but my knee went one way because I was thinking I was going to go this way. And as soon as it touched the surface, the cruciate snapped completely. And I had the surgery, and the doctor said, look, you're out for a year. And I didn't really know at the time how long you'd be out with a cruciate. And he said, you're out for a year at least. So surgery is going to be in 2 months. Get yourself as fit as possible. And I'm thinking, I'm going to be out of playing football for a year. What am I going to do? At this point in my life, this is everything for me. Now, in saying that, the Sunday game was an institution in our house every Sunday night during the summer. Match of the Day was an institution in our house every Saturday night. If my dad would ever let me stay up when I was a kid, sometimes it was on after Lenny Henry. I'll never forget, on BBC. It used to start at 10:45, and he'd often let me stay up. I'm a Villa fan, to watch the Villa highlights at least. And that I used to watch Des Lynam on Match of the Day or Michael Lester on the Sunday game and think that has to be the best job in the world. Yeah. Not only are you talking about the game, but you're talking to legends of the game, whether it be, Pat Spillane or Colin O'Rourke or Joe Brolly, or whether it be, nowadays it's your Alan Shearer's, Ian Wright's, Gary Lineker hosting. So it's a dream job if you can go and get it. It's the most competitive industry you'll ever find, because the reality is there's only one Sunday game host. That's Joanne Cantwell. Only one. So in the entire country of Ireland, if you want to be the Sunday game host, you've got to somehow take Joanne Cantwell off her Sunday game seat and you take it. And that's not an easy thing to do. So it's it's very competitive, but it's a lot of fun. And I think what happened to me then when I tore my cruciate, sorry for going off on a tangent here, is
no bother at all.
The doctor said you're out for a year, and I said I need to invest my time in something else. I need to be proactive here. I was 19, mad for going out, single, like just constantly chasing girls, and my focus was that, but I needed something else to take the place of football. Yeah. And I decided to go to as many TV shows as I possibly could, because I was studying journalism at the time and broadcasting. So I went to RTE and I just applied for every single show there was to be in the audience. And I got into questions and answers at the time. Zero interest in politics, really. Zero. And I'm sitting in the audience like an awful muppet, wondering what's going on. But I'm not even listening to what they're saying. I'm focusing on what the floor managers do. And I'm focusing on the cameras. I'm focusing on the kind of prompts that the host is getting at the time. I just fell in love instantly. And I knew I was going to love it anyway. But when that red light went on, and John Bowman was the host at the time, and how he was so unbelievably serious, but then I'd go to other shows and I'd notice that the host would have better interactions with the audience. And it just became like a game in my mind. So much fun. So I asked the floor manager that day, Johnny McGuigan was his name, now that I remember. I asked the floor manager, could I have a copy of the running order? So the show script, essentially. Okay. And in RTE, and I didn't realize it at the time, I was only getting it to kind of show off and to have it and maybe bring it into the lecturer in college and be like, look, I went, and this was the show that I went to. Nearly framed the thing. And I ended up looking at it, and it had all the phone numbers of all the people that worked on the show. So the director, the producer, the editors, everything, their phone numbers. Couldn't believe it. Okay. Obviously, naturally, the thing to do is, and I was so scared to do it, pick up the phone, the old landlines back in Raheny in Dublin with the long string, I'd try and find a quiet room, and I'd call, and I ended up calling the same guy twice. So I called, spoke to several people. They're like, yeah, just, send in your, they give me the usual stuff, which was send your CV. So you're sending your CV into a dark hole in Donnybrook. You don't know where it's going to go. Yeah. You don't know if someone's going to get their hands on it. I didn't have anything else to offer, really. I did some work for like the Northside people, and I had a lot of experience in different places, like working in petrol station, like things like that, and a lot of football stuff. But so the guy that I called back actually said to me, you've called me already, you know that, you called me a couple of months ago, and since then, he said, don't call me again, but since then there's an agency that have been set up to hire people to make tea and coffee. And I couldn't believe it. I'm like, get in, this is perfect. I can make tea and coffee. I know how to do that. So I called the production people. They're still there. Anyone listen to this, get in touch with them, the production people, and I ended up getting an interview. And the interview was to be a runner, again, making tea and coffee on the Olympics in 2004. So I was 19, right, and I got the job. I don't know how I got the job, but I'll never forget. I was there like an hour early. I went to a cafe across the road. My hands were shaking, coffee's going everywhere, and somehow I got the job, and I was just in my element. So, and from that in the door, it's everything, because then you can kind of blossom from within. You can get to know the names of all the directors, producers, on-air hosts. You can learn everything about every role and just study people. And there's always people that get these jobs that just want to have a laugh, that just don't really want to keep their eye on the ball. And if you go there and you get an opportunity to get in the door and you really study everybody, even if it's a job you have no interest in, if you figure out what's going on and why that piece of the puzzle is so important, that's going to stand to you later on in your career in some way. And you don't even know it yet, but it will. And so that's why getting the door, I think, at RTE was just so important. And then from within, I was able to eventually become a sub-editor. So you're editing the tape. So in that job, for me, I'm sitting next to Graham Souness or Johnny Giles. And my job, as they're watching a Premiership match, was to log the game. And then they'd be pointing out things like, I'll never forget Johnny Giles telling me, look at this kid here. He's only 16. And it was Cesc Fabregas. And he said, this kid is a genius. Watch him. And this coming from John Giles, one of the best midfielders to ever play in England, and the best for Ireland, was a big deal. So I'm looking at him, and I just start asking questions. What is it about him? What characteristics does he have, do you think? And he said one thing. Arsenal were playing Liverpool. I'll never, ever forget it. And he goes, I'm going to show you two midfielders here. I think this kid is going to be better than Steven Gerrard. And I'm like, that's a big thing to say, because Gerrard at the time was the boss for Liverpool, obviously, and in the Premier League. But he said, watch Fabregas, and his head was constantly on a swivel. And they were playing it out of the back, Arsenal, and Fabregas is like looking for that little bit of space, and he wants to receive the ball. He knows where the pass is going. And Giles was talking about his vision and his awareness on the field. And he goes, if Gerrard had that, he'd be the best midfielder like around, but he doesn't. And then he showed me, like, within 2 minutes, another clip of Gerrard, and they were playing, and Gerrard turned his back to the goal, and Gerrard just started walking, and he started looking ahead. But maybe he was being overly critical, I don't know, but either way, it was eye-opening, because it was something I'd never noticed before, that Gerrard would turn his back to the ball and kind of just start strolling out, whereas Fabregas is always like wanting to take on that responsibility. Not that Gerrard didn't. I don't want people to think I'm saying that about Gerrard, but it was just eye-opening to be that young and be sitting next to a guy who was obviously an excellent analyst for a long time and an amazing player.
Yeah, and he looks at the game in a different way as well. Like, in terms of, when you look at Fabregas and Gerrard, the first thing you think of is goals. Naturally, with every player, you think of the goals they score, or if it's keeper, the saves they've made, or something like that. But for him to look in a different way, and as you said, you kind of acquire that now and bring it into what you're doing as a sports commentator.
Well, I ended up becoming, years later, in 2012 or 13, I ended up becoming the analyst. So, like, again, there's the George Hamilton and there's the Ray Houghton. Like, I ended up being like the Ray Houghton commentator for the Chicago team in MLS on Comcast Sportsnet, the station there. And then I'm like, wow, how have I just all of a sudden ended up in this position? But it was a lot of experience from sitting next to like Sassunas and Giles that made me think about the game a little bit differently. And I picked up more than I could read in any book from those two guys, just chatting to them and watching everything but the ball. You know, like, you're looking for trends. You don't want to dive in on a player if he makes one mistake, but if he makes two and then he makes three, well, then you're like, okay, there's a trend here. There's something consistent about this. And they were superb, and it just taught me so much.
And it's actually interesting you say that about Souness as well, because Souness he's a man who gives a lot of criticism, but he gets a lot as well. A lot of people don't like the way he goes on, especially he is a set on Paul Pogba for some reason as well. But did he teach you things? Did he teach you things though that you have brought into your career? Like, bad things to say about him for you.
Well, I tell you the biggest thing he taught me, Ryan, never judge a book by its cover, right? When he came into work in RTE for the 2006 World Cup, I was a researcher. That was a big break for me, by the way, getting a job as a researcher instead of a runner for the 06 World Cup alongside Owen O'Callaghan. And Owen and I were still very good friends and had the best of times. But Souness came in. Everybody was afraid of Souness because Souness was seen as this hard-nosed, like tough tackling midfielder, but also a class ball player, but also just a guy who wasn't willing to give Irish guys breaks at club management until Damien Duff. Now, I never wanted to believe that, and people were trying to read into that sort of stuff. But you want to give a guy a break and get to know him a little bit. Now, obviously, he's the on-air talent, as they say in America, and you're only a researcher, so you're not really going to get to know him too well. However, he came in and he couldn't have been nicer. Could not have been nicer, to the point where by day 2 or 3, the runners are having the crack with him. And there was a guy, Porrig Nugent, and Porrig said to him one day, like, "Hey, Graham, all the production staff against you guys in a five-a-side will destroy you." And he was getting brave, Porrig, and he said it to him and stood up. He's like, "I'll break your legs in that five-a-side and we'll also win the game." And he was joking, but it was just the way he went into character straight away, like he is on TV. Yeah. It was just so cool to see and to kind of get to know him a little bit. Like, if I saw him now, he wouldn't know me at all. But back then I was 20, 21, and it was just such a cool time to get to kind of know a guy like that.
Yeah. And then, so you're with RTE and you're doing the analysis and stuff like that. How was that as high as you got in Ireland in terms of journalism before you went over to America?
Well, I got a chance to go on air with. Do you remember TTV? It was this thing. You probably won't. So they had this show. It used to always be like, 5-minute segments between like The Simpsons and Home and Away and on network. Is it RT2 now or Network 2?
RT2, yeah.
RT2, yeah. So it'd be between like shows at say 5 and 6 o'clock in the evening. They'd have the entertainment guy, the sports guy, the movie guy, the fashion guy. So you'd have like different lads and ladies that would swap out in these roles. And I was a sports guy for about a year and a bit. And that was ridiculously cool. And I couldn't believe I had the chance to audition for that. And then I got it. And I'm like, I shouldn't be on this. Like the first time I ever did it, I'm telling you, they had like a viewing party in my house, my whole family, and everyone's sitting around. And they were all like, "Hey, you did great!" And I'll never forget. I was talking about club championship football. And I was talking about a team in Armagh against a team from Cork. And I'll never forget. Like I rehearsed the lines in my head so much that it just, for me, I'd hate to see it back now. I'd hate to see it. But at the time, my family were supportive and saying, "You were great." I reckon I was awful. But yeah. I kept doing it for a year or so, and then I got really comfortable and confident doing it. And it's like anything in life. Like once you get a chance to keep doing it, you're going to get better. And then I moved into radio. So I was a 2FM and Radio 1 sports broadcaster for a few years, like two or 3 years. I was doing all the bulletins, and first time ever on the news at 1. If you have time for a quick story, I couldn't believe I got an opportunity to host the sports news on Radio 1. It was the 1 o'clock news with Sean O'Rourke. And this is a daunting job, Rian, because you walk in it's the TV building in RT and there's the radio building. And it takes a few minutes, to be honest, to get across from radio to TV. And usually you walk in and it's the presenter, Sean O'Rourke, who's magnificent. Lovely fella, serious at his job, obviously. So you walk in and there's usually politicians sitting around a round table in this room. And then you've got to walk in and read the sports news. And at the time, reading a piece of paper just seemed like a big deal for me. I just didn't want to fluff my lines in any way. So I'm walking across and I nail it. The first day, I was delighted with myself. I walked away. My dad was listening. My granny was listening in Dublin, and well done. So I didn't want to tell anyone else I was doing it. And sure enough, Sean O'Rourke sent a note to my boss at the time, Declan McBennett, and said, "Get that guy to do it again tomorrow. He did really well." Declan says, "Fair play to you. You're on again tomorrow." I'm buzzing, Rian. I couldn't believe my luck. I'm back doing it again the next day. And sure enough, the next day, I get my scripts ready. There's a thing called iNews. I have them all in the system, and I'm logging different sports stories as they go. And I print out all my scripts. And at the time, stupidly, I had like every sport on a different page. So I'd start with the first story actually was a GAA story. Aidan O'Mahony had failed a drug test. He had too much salbutamol in his system, substance you get from an inhaler. And I was walking across the RT campus. Let's say I'm on it like 1:20. It's 1:10. I'm buzzing. I'm over there in 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Hey, how are you? Nice to see you. Yeah, just going across to do the sports news, 1 o'clock news, no big deal. And I'm like 21. So I'm chuffed with myself. And I'm walking across and I'm just doing one final check and I realize, oh no, I'm after forgetting the golf story. What am I going to do? So at that point in my head, being relatively green and inexperienced, I said, well, there's option 1 and 2. The one is I go over and I just do the sports news and I say nothing about the golf and hope that nobody says, where was the golf news? Yeah. It was the Bridgestone Invitational in Ohio. Or option 2 was go all the way back, which was a bit of a trek, like I said. I'd have to run, print it, you have it scripted out already, grab it and sprint back. And at the time I was fit and healthy and well able to do it, so I did it. I said, you know what, go. Ran. Printer was out of paper. Couldn't find paper. I'm like scrambling big time. Now the fear is setting in as I tell this story. That's how vividly I remember this.
You're just reliving it now.
Oh man, finally I got the thing printed off and now let's say I'm on this is it, like I said, it's about a 6-minute walk across. And I get the paper and it's like 1:18 and I'm sprinting out of the building. And I'm this new kid as well. Like realistically, you shouldn't be sprinting in a building. And I leg it out and I'm running across the campus. I go into the TV building, the main reception area, go up the stairs, use my key pass, in they go. And I open the door to the Radio 1, the News at 1 studio. And the producer, Bernadette, is there. And she says, quickly, Kevin, you're on. Come on, let's go. And I burst into the studio. And as I open it, Sean O'Rourke is there with politicians again. And he says, and now let's go to the sports desk here. Joining us in studio, Kevin Egan.
Oh, Jesus.
Rain. Disaster. Absolute disaster.
Oh, God.
Footballer Aidan O'Mahony has failed the drugs test, and I talk about the salbutamol system, and I am praying that the ground will just swallow me up, and nobody will ever see me again. It was
Oh,
that,
God.
and I didn't even get to the second sport. I didn't even do it because I was so
No.
embarrassed at that point. I did the rest of that story. I think Sean interrupted me at one point to help me out, and he said, "Oh, sounds like you could use a bit of that salbutamol, Kevin." And they all laughed. And it's a proper nightmare. Like for any young broadcasting student or a professional like yourself, it's a nightmare. And I left and I put my head down. I burned it. I didn't even say anything. And I walked out and I got a text off Darren Frehel. You know Darren Frehel? And I got a text off
Yeah.
Darren Frehel, RT Sport. And Darren is a brilliant broadcaster himself. And he just texted me. He says, "It's gone. Forget about it." He heard it live, obviously. And he said, "Are you okay?" And my dad then called me and said, "What happened?" Like, it was that bad. So I think the moral of the story here is, and sorry for going off on a big tangent again, but the moral of the story here is, in any crossroads like this in your career, or in a moment where you think there's a panic and a drastic situation, I thought there was option one and option two. The reality is there's a path somewhere, there's a dirt road that you can take that'll get you to where you want to go, probably quicker and with a better solution that I didn't take. And the simple answer there was walk across, you're there really early, and just ask Bernadette, can you jump on the computer and go to pga.com and just see where that young Irish golfer is in the leaderboard, and then you know that this player is on 5 under after 9, and that's all you need to give. And at least you're giving up. Oh, by the way, the golfer at the time was, I think, a 17-year-old by the name of Rory McIlroy. So it turns out that story is kind of funny now, but at the time I thought it was going to derail my whole career, and the reality was most people laughed, and I was able to get on with it.
Yeah, I'm glad you gave a bit of a motivational message there, because there'll be a few aspiring journalists kind of like, geez, no, I might be a teacher after this. might change the career path. But so that was just before or around the time that were you considering going to America around that time, or?
Yeah, I think so. Like I said, I was 21, 22 around at the time that happened, and I was doing the radio and TTV, and I was still working on the Sunday Game and Premiership. Everything was going well, but you know, the moment you settle on any job is the moment you failed, I think, and you have to always see a path for yourself, and also a life path, and ask yourself, is there something else I'd like to do before, say, for example, my career really does take off in a different way and I'm offered a job that I can't refuse. One of the big things I wanted to do, I traveled Australia, I traveled most of Europe, I'd followed football and gone to different Ireland games, but I really wanted to work in America. I really wanted to just get my feet wet and just get in and get some experience. And part of the inspiration for that was that Glenn Collane, who's now working with the European Broadcast Union, he was the former head of RT Sport and then the former head of RTE. Okay. And Glenn, at a really young age, left RTE to go to ITV and got some great experience at ITV, and came back and he actually skipped a few steps of the ladder because he had experience elsewhere. And I was convinced that was the best thing that I could do was go. I was 23 when I left. I arrived in America the day Barack Obama was inaugurated. Right. Go, get in somewhere, get some experience in the US. My mother's from Chicago, so I have a passport. Make use of it, and go back to RTE and skip a few steps of the ladder and be presenting the Sunday Game by the time I was 25. That was the goal. I'm only joking, but that was honestly, like, in my thought process, was if I can get experience on air abroad and learn and maybe bring back a different perspective, it could take me places. So yeah, I left, and here I am 11 and a half years later, still in America.
Yeah. And going to America, did you find yourself, being Irish, you have that bit of an alternative, obviously the voice, you've got something different that you can offer. Did you find that worked in your favor, or did it make any difference at all?
If anything, it went against me at the start, because, you know, you go away and you think RTE is a big deal. RTE is nothing. Like, you go into places and you say, I worked at RTE, and obviously they have no idea what you're talking about because it's an Irish national broadcaster. Ireland's an incredibly small country. It's a wonderful broadcaster. RTE taught me so much, but the reality is I was working on the Sunday game in the Premiership, and I go into Chicago and I'm looking for a job in sports media in Chicago when it's all about the Bears in NFL. It's all about the Blackhawks in hockey. It's all about the Cubs and the White Sox in baseball and the Bulls in basketball. The Chicago Fire, relatively insignificant in the Chicago market. So I found myself questioning my decision fairly quickly, I think. Probably, 4 or 5 months in, I'm still trying to stay in touch with RT Radio. I'm still doing the odd report for RT Radio from America. I tried to learn how to edit, and I found this software, and I had a terrible computer. And I found myself just starting to enjoy my life too much as well, aside from the career aspirations. I was going out too much, probably not enough, some might say. And I was just having fun. I met my wife after a week of being in America. Can you imagine that? I went over single, never really had a girlfriend in all my life, just a few month things, relationships here and there, but never met anyone like Meg. And then I met her, and I was done. I knew 3-4 dates in. I'm like, if she's happy with me, I'm hooked. So it was scary because about 7 months in, I remember thinking, what am I going to do here? I can't do anything else. This is all I care about. It's what I love doing. And I kept going and I kept knocking on all these radio station and TV network stores, and they all had my CV. They all had been pestered by me, and eventually I got really lucky. Jackie Hurley, who works at RT now, Jackie had said to me, there's a friend of mine, an old roommate of hers, who is working now at a network in Chicago called the Big Ten Network. It's a Fox College sports station, so covering college American football, college basketball. It's a big deal. And her name was Lisa Cornwell. And Lisa, Jackie just basically sent a note to Lisa being like, this guy might contact you if you can help him. He's a friend. And I pestered Lisa, and Lisa was slow at the start getting back to me. And I used to watch her games when she'd be commentator hosting. I used to wait till she got off air, and then I used to send her a text afterwards being like, great show. I was that guy, trying not to be annoying, but I tried to do it when I knew she'd have less on her plate. Yeah. And eventually she agreed to meet me for a coffee. And I met her for a coffee right next to the network. And I made sure, obviously, if anyone's listening to this that plans on networking, make sure you always pay. Never let someone pay when you've asked them to go for something. So I bought her a little bit of lunch and a coffee, and we had a chat, and we actually got along really well. She kept her cards really close to her chest at the start, but then seemed to loosen up a little bit. And she said to me, look, would you like to come into the network and I can show you around another time? And I said, please, yeah. And I've since actually contacted her recently enough. Hadn't talked to her in about 8 years. And contacted her to show her the emails. And I just said to her, I just want to say thank you again for taking a shot and even just showing me around. And she said it was something I didn't even think about it. You did everything yourself. I was like, no, you didn't. You opened the door for me and allowed me to walk in. So she showed me around. And the first guy I met when I walked into the Big Ten Network was a guy named Bob, who said, he was this jovial, bubbly character. And he said, who's your team? And I said, Aston Villa. And as long as I didn't say Man United, I felt like he was going to help me out. And big Arsenal fan. And he eventually somehow got me in as a graphics producer. So a few months of chatting to Bob back and forth and just trying to get in. I got in August of 2009. So I was 8 months pushing for a job. And I got in August 2009 as a graphics producer, 5 days a week, working on college football shows. Now, I got thrown in my first day, Rian, was on a non-conference college football day. So there were 12 Big Ten teams, like Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, massive games. These stadia would have 100,000 people, 110,000 people at the big house in Michigan watching these games. And my job was to produce the graphics at the bottom of the screen during the studio shows. Okay. And Rian, I'm telling you, I looked at these, they call them box scores, the stats sheets that would get released straight after the games. I'm like, what's a TFL? Tackle for loss. And I'm in this position in a live environment where people are screaming and shouting, and I'm sinking again. I had one of those Sean O'Rourke radio moments again where I'm like, I'm done.
So you're doing this your first experience actually seeing all this TFL stuff is when you're live.
Like I looked it up and I tried to research, but nothing prepares you for the moment that you're live. And they threw me in the deep end, and I was it was tough. Yeah, I had a guy, John, that was helping me out there. It was such a great help. But I had two ladies that were to my right and left that were working on these graphics machines, and I was their boss. And now I'm 24 at the time, and I'm there technically telling them what they have to do, and in the nicest way possible because I needed their help. And they're building the full screen graphics, the lower third graphics, and I am just absorbing everything that I possibly could at that moment in time. And I remember walking out after that first day and thinking, I'm cooked here. No chance they're going to have me back. And I heard the lady speaking, saying, if that kid is back in again, he's going to bring us a quick death. And because I didn't know what I was doing, I didn't know, like I had done graphics in Ireland, but it's completely different. And the way they save the material, the way they repurpose graphics, the way they churn out things at such a rapid rate, like the shows in America are just churn. And in Ireland, like you look at the Sunday game, and they've got these beautiful curated montages. You get some of that in America, but it's more like, how do we get stuff out quicker? And I found myself sinking, and luckily enough, just kept treading water. And then eventually I started floating, and everything was fine. And one thing led to another. At that network, I actually had a guy. I recently told the story for the first time. I never told it before. I told it on American radio that there was a guy there who wouldn't put me on in the air because of my Irish accent. And like you asked me, is it a plus? It can be both. That's the truth. Like I've probably had a lot of breaks because of maybe being Irish, who knows? But this guy flat out told me, he led me on for so long. And he eventually told me that, I said to him, look, can we have an honest conversation here? I've done everything you've asked me to do. I've commentated on loads of games for free, like just to get the tapes to bring to you, and you've asked me to do everything, and I've done it. And I'm talking about getting a college soccer game where there's 500 people in attendance. And he just wouldn't give it to me. And he said, I wouldn't put your Irish accent on the air. And I said, okay. I was shaking, but again, I tried to stay as cool as possible, and I thanked him. And I just said, this is the most honest you've ever been. So I went to the studio boss at the Big Ten Network. Sorry, there's a thing in TV, there's the studio side, and then there's the remote side. So the remote side covers the live games on location. Then there's the TV studio side, which is the in-house studio.
Yeah.
So I went to my boss there. He was the most laid-back guy in the world. And I walked in and said, Quinton was in Q. I said, Q, any chance at all, if I come in before my job, before my hours for free, if I could do the graphics, do the tapes, produce and present an online soccer show, would you be willing to let me do that if I could convince certain people to help me? And he was like, Dubs, I don't care what you do, man. Just don't get in the way. I was like, nice. Okay, good. So I ended up getting an opportunity, and I convinced the director and a few camera friends to help me out. And I started this thing called the BTN Soccer Report. And it was probably terrible. I don't think it was that bad, actually. It was okay, but it was a break. It was my first time on screen in America. And then sure enough, about a year later, the Chicago Fire MLS team saw that, and they said, do you want to audition to be our sideline reporter? And one thing led to another. Got that, became an analyst. And then that led to be in sports in Miami, getting a job hosting like El Clasico and US national team World Cup qualifiers. So
yeah, man, it's just like a roller coaster is probably the only way I can describe it, is it?
Yeah, because it's over such a long period of time. When you tell these stories, sometimes it feels like a roller coaster. The reality is I never had the confidence. Like I never believed when I was back in RTE, if you would have said to me, you're going to get a chance to host or to present on CNN, internet, like not a hope. You're having a laugh. Never. Yeah. If you said to me, you're going to get a chance to do TTV, I would have said never. I think it's from my mother's background, where I never had the confidence to believe that I could ever do anything on camera. And it's only when maybe you're doing something and someone else sees that potential, and then they say you're going to get a shot at this. And you're, oh, geez, oh no. And you worry. And now I've just gotten to the point where I'm like, throw anything at me. I'm ready, because I'm sick of doubting myself. I think I'm good to go. And with the hard work and a bit of belief, you can do anything.
Yeah. Say now, even when Richie was telling me about how you got, he gave me sort of a brief
a brief story of how you got over to America. He's like, oh, you should get on to Kevin, and like he started out, making teas and coffees in the RTE, and then he's in America now. Listen to that story. I was like, geez, he started off in RTE, must have got a lucky break and went to America. But you've got so many, you've got so many stories along the way and different jobs and different things. And as you say, it builds up, and you're doing editing, and then you're going on the sideline, and then you're presenting, and you're analysing stuff like that.
But Rian, I'm telling you, everything is luck. The reality is this. You can talk about hard work all you want, right? You've had to work hard along the way, but a lot of people work hard. There's a lot of people out there that work hard that don't get breaks, that don't get as lucky. And I hate to bring this up now, to be honest with you, but I am a privileged white male that happens to have gotten breaks. And there's certain people, I'm sure, that maybe did listen to my accent and say, actually, he'd be decent in that position. If I was born on the streets of New Delhi, or I was born in Lagos, Nigeria, I guarantee you the path to presenting football in America would be an awful lot more difficult than it would for this white guy who has a passport for the US that lives in Dublin. So realistically, I've been very, very lucky the entire way through. And I think when you get that little bit of luck, then it's about capitalizing on it, and it's about not messing up, and also being incredibly grateful the entire time for those breaks. But I've definitely been lucky, no question.
Yeah. So at this moment, is the MLS back? I haven't actually kept any bit of tracking it myself. Is the MLS back now?
Well, funny enough, the tournament name is MLS is back. That's the name of the tournament that's starting on July 8th. And
right, okay.
Everyone's looking forward to it because, we missed the game. However, Orlando and Florida in general is the epicenter of the coronavirus right now in the US. So the plan is to bring MLS teams into this worldwide sports, this ESPN Disney complex, and have all the games there and keep everybody in-house. You're not allowed to leave. The only concerns are that the hotel staff are allowed to leave. So they're a little bit worried about that. Certain clubs have had players test positive over the last few days, and they're trying to limit this and trying to get this tournament to go ahead. And I'm concerned because, I see the growth of this virus in the US, and I see that there's a lack of leadership, and the country's as divided as it's ever been. It's more divided than it's ever been. And I look at Ireland right now, and 5 cases yesterday, 0 deaths. And everybody's swimming in the same direction. And it's inspirational, to be honest, being abroad and looking at home right now and seeing everybody working so hard to get rid of this and eradicate it. And then over here, the numbers are growing in the state that I live in.
Yeah, like some people might say that, let's say like in Leo Varadkar's case, he is in control of a smaller amount of people. But at the same time, you're like some Boris Johnson, you're Donald Trump. These guys have more power than the likes of Leo Varadkar would have. So, there's pluses and minuses in terms of why one country should be doing better or the same as the other in terms of getting back on track.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think one of the biggest differences for me is that a health issue hasn't really been transformed into a political issue in Ireland, whereas it certainly has in the US, and it has in the UK as well. And it shouldn't be a political issue. There's what is there, over 120,000 people have died in the US from the coronavirus, and the numbers are on the rise in Georgia and Florida. It's insane right now. So I love the fact that whatever you feel about Leo Varadkar and whatever you feel about Irish politics, I feel it's been parked for the benefit of everybody within the country, and it's a massive bravo to everybody in Ireland.
Yeah, because I'm not sure if I'm right in saying this, but I heard on the radio earlier on today that Micheál Martin, who's the leader of Fianna Fáil, he'll be Taoiseach soon, and then Varadkar is going to take over again. They're going in as a coalition, and it's not like there's a big thing being made about that. As you said, the political side of things is just being parked, and it's just about the good of the country at the moment. And it is when you see how things are going in America, you see how things are going in England. It shows, I suppose, how well it is actually being run over here in times like this.
Mm-hmm. No, very true, very true. Here's hoping we can all get through it and get back to work soon.
Hope to God, yeah. Hope to God is right. So you're saying the MLS is returning soon, and that'll be you back to work. You've had a good while off now, I'm sure. Have you been doing stuff online or?
I'm doing a little bit of stuff for. I don't know if you know what the ICC is, International Champions Cup. The company that bring over all the big teams to North America and around the world actually for the summer tournaments. The likes of Real Madrid, Barcelona, and Man United will be here in America. Yeah. They're all ICC tournaments. So I'm the host for them as well. So I'm doing some stuff from home. And then I'm launching my own, I haven't said this publicly yet, but I'm launching my own show on July 1st called Kicking Back. And Kicking Back is essentially very similar to what you're doing right here. It's kind of casual conversations. And I've been fortunate enough to have brilliant guests on, the likes of Robbie Keane and Christian Vieri of late, and also people from within the football realm, like impressionists, biggest influencers in the EA and gaming community. The biggest transfer guru out there, the one that breaks all the news. So it's hopefully going to be a very interesting show for anybody who's interested in the world of football and everything else. Check it out, July 1st.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to listening to it myself, because obviously you said this is the first you've said to anybody publicly about it. So I'm looking forward to it. And just on, I suppose, football, I had sent out on Instagram, as I do every week when there's a podcast, I send out questions, a blank sheet, I suppose you could say, and give people the chance to ask questions, to whether it be yourself, whether it be Roberto Wallace the other day as well, a few guys like that. So I suppose you've answered a lot of them in terms of your journey to getting to America. But there's one that stood out for me. I actually saw it on your Instagram. You've been lucky to interview and, I suppose, be on a panel with some big names in football. And if you were to make a 5-a-side team out of all the people you've interviewed, would you be able to whittle it down to 5?
Oh wow! All right, 5-a-side team. Can I be part of the 5-a-side team? Can we make it a 6-a-side team and just put me in goal? How about that?
Yeah, go on.
All right, so 5 more. I would have to say, all right, let's see. At the back, I'd go with Nesta. Nesta, I still think for some strange reason he's actually underrated, because he came through just after Franco Baresi and Paolo Maldini was at the same time. Nesta was the best tackler I've ever seen. Reading the game's sublime. So Nesta, I'd say just in front of Nesta, I'd probably play Ruud Gullit. On the right, you'd fit David Beckham in, I think. Let's see. Two more. So I've got Christian Vieri, Bobo Vieri, his most expensive transfer at the turn of the millennium in the world. You know, an amazing career. He's up there potentially. Raul, Patrick Kluivert. Let's see.
Did I see him at Kaká one time as well?
Yeah, Kaká, I suppose, would have to be there. Kaká. So we'll go, how about this? We'll go Nesta, Gullit in the middle, Beckham on the right, Kaká on the left, and Vieri. I think Vieri's a ball player. Raul will be excellent in a 5-a-side team, though.
Yeah. That's why it's something I do on the podcast is actually with a lot of the GA, whether it be football or hurling. We've actually only had one hurler on so far, but with a lot of the footballers, they'll make 15 of the best they've played with and put themselves in it. And nice. I usually throw that up on Instagram after. So I'll do a bit of it's called My 15, so I suppose we'll put it My 6.
We could fit one more in, because 7-a-side sounds better, doesn't it?
Yeah.
My 7-a-side, you could probably put in. I'm trying to think of. There's definitely other people that I'm just not thinking of off the top of my head. Who else did you see? Anyone else that stand out? A few.
I suppose even in recent times in the MLS.
MLS, yeah, David Villa could be there for sure. I would probably go with Raul alongside Vieri up front, Kaká on the left, Beckham on the right, Ruud Gullit in the middle, with Nesta protecting me in goal.
Yeah. Sounds good. Did you get to actually meet all of them, interview them in person?
I interviewed all of them, separately. Like Bobo Vieri he's a friend, and we go for dinner, and he's got a daughter same age roughly as my son, and
wow.
it was so cool because he's such a good guy, and he's the type though that you need to earn his trust in a way. And I'd be hosting the shows, and he'd be the analyst, so we got to know each other quite well. And I'd always try and help him out. And he'd help me out, and he's such an amazing character. Like he's been like the biggest celebrity in Italy during the whole coronavirus because he's just so funny, and he's a laugh. You know, I was in charge of picking a restaurant one night, and this is part of the podcast that I'll release with Bobo and I on July 1st. And I was in charge of picking a restaurant for a bunch of us to go out for dinner. The first time I met his wife, Marcello Lippi's son Davide was there as well, and we all went to dinner. I picked a southern food restaurant, like schoolboy error. Imagine picking fried chicken for a lot of Italians.
Yeah,
it just didn't go down well.
Yeah, you're probably thinking if I pick an Italian, it might not be the right one as well.
Yeah, exactly. So no, I'm fortunate enough to interview all of them. All of them really nice. And it's just, you know what's so cool is when you get to chat to someone that you've looked up to your entire life. I should probably put Robbie Keane in there actually too.
Yeah.
Being Irish. Do you know what? Swap out, if you could do a bench of Raoul and Clivert and a couple others, put Robbie Keane up front alongside Bobo, because the two of them are good friends from their days at Inter.